What's the difference between an aberration and a monstrosity? Welcome back to Eye of the Beholder, where we review Dungeon & Dragon miniatures created by WOTC and WizKids during a 20-year period between 2003 and 2023. To the question, it's nebulous at best. Per fandom, aberrations are unnatural creatures with no place in the natural world, while monstrosities do? All I know is that I have over 200 monstrosity miniatures, so settle in and enjoy. Aldani, also known unimaginably enough as lobstermen, are a race of crustaceans who walk upright who prefer to be left alone in their swampy lakes of the Aldani basin. They rarely resort to violence, preferring to, at best, scare away outsiders or, if that fails, bribing them to leave. If roused, however, they tend to fight to the death, using their large pincers to inflict serious damage.
With no WOTC Aldani produced, we should be used now to WizKids giving us two variants of a creature, this time in 2017's Tomb of Annihilation set, which, by the way, is lousy with variants. Here we get an unarmed common and a trident-armed uncommon. Both are monochrome red with specks of black for the eyes at the end of the eye stalks, and a bit of white around the mouth. Pose is nothing special, but I do like that WizKids did add a clear plastic stand for stabilization. These minis are rock solid on their base. Score: Paint 13, Pose 11, Playability 14, Pizzazz 13, for a score of 51. It makes perfect sense that our final Aldani miniature comes from 2023's Season Shore set. A darker, almost blood red body with a sizable dark wash really brings out the detailing on the carapace, and we get much better detailing around the facial area. Note the white of the eyes with the black pupil on the eye stalks, as well as the open, pinkish mouth. Pose is also a bit more aggressive, both pincers upraised and open, ready to clamp down on a foe before him. Score: Paint 13, Pose 13, Playability 14, Pizzazz 15, for a score of 55.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes? Well, Indy, it could have been worse. Meet the Banya, which looks like a pit viper except it has two heads. Its primary means of locomotive is the standard snake slither, but it can also grab its other head and roll at its target like a hoop. And did I mention that it bites turns its target to stone? Yeah, good times.
Our only Banya mini comes from 2023's Season Shore set, and, I gotta admit, it's pretty effing cool. Coiled about itself on a medium base, both heads have distinct looks. The top seems to be focused on an unfortunate foe, while the second strikes, maw agape and fangs exposed. Two-tone green for the body with a dark wash really makes the scales pop, not to mention the red of the open maw. Score: Paint 23, Pose 25, Playability 17, Pizzazz 25, for a score of 90.
The Ankeg is an insectoid burrowing creature that hunts from below. Its thick carapace is very tough to penetrate, sensible for a burrower. Its favorite tactic is to surprise its target by bursting from the soil and trying to grab its prey in its powerful mandibles, while excreting a digestive acid over said unfortunate, which, by the way, it can also spit up to 60 feet away. Fun fact, Ankegs sometimes attack in groups, and if two attack the same target, well, the world's worst version of tug-of-war ensues.
WOTC gave us our first Ankeg in 2005's Underdark set. The monochrome black makes it difficult to see much in the way of details, but the overlapping chitinous plates on the abdomen do stand out. Posed with its front two legs up and pincers open, it's not a particularly outstanding miniature, but for the longest time it was your only option if you needed an Ankeg, which enhanced playability. Score: Paint 10, Pose 11, Playability 17, pizzazz 12 for a score of 50. At least it was the only option until this masterpiece came along. From 2020's Eberron Rising from the Last War set, we get this ANKEG. WizKids goes with a tan carapace with a lighter tan dark wash for detailing and 2 black dots for eyes. The base has a covering of terrain from which the ANKEG is bursting out of, forward pincers raised and mandibles wide open. Much bigger and much more scary than the WOTC version, the kinetic energy of this mini is off the charts. You can probably already guess the score, 100.
Arasta was originally a dryad before a jealous god turned her into Arasta of the Endless Web. Obviously inspired by the Greek myth Archain, Arasta now lives in her lair within the Nessian wood, sending her spider servants out into the world to seek out a cure for her curse.
Of course, our Arasta mini comes from 2020's Mythic Odysseys of Theros set. Set on a huge base, the dryad part of her is obvious in the long white hair, but her facial feature is twisted into a dark visage by the curse. She is posed with one arm outstretched and palm upturned as if asking for tribute. Her bulbous abdomen, brown with a black underbelly, dwarfs the dryad part of her. Couple cool details. Look closely at the spots on the front part of her abdomen. Those are spiders. Also, the legs are translucent, with specks of silver that catch the light. Playability normally would be limited to the Theros setting, but this mini would make for a nice stand-in for Lolth in a pinch. Score: Paint 25, Pose 21, Playability 17, Pizzazz 25 for a score of 88.
The Banderhob is what you get if Monsters, Inc. was a horror movie and not a kiddie film. Creatures from the Shadowfell who can appear out of the shadows, they often attack while their target is sleeping. The most terrifying aspect of these creatures is that no one knows who controls them or why they are compelled to pick certain targets. Fun fact, they sometimes attack in pairs, one targeting the victim while the second cleans up any witnesses.
We get our only Banderhob in 2019's Volos and Mordenkainen's Foes set. The best part of this mini is obviously the head and face. Yellow, toad-like eyes below wrinkled brows, and a very large mouth, curled in a grim smile that shows all the teeth. The wart-covered body truly stands out with its green-on-green coloring, while the pose, with a slight forward lean, to me looks like he is indeed emerging from the shadows, ready to claim a victim. Score: Paint 19, Pose 20, Playability 15, Pizzazz 20 for a score of 74.
The Basilisk is an 8-legged, lizard-like monster with the terrifying ability to turn living creatures to stone with a look. Fortunately, they are both slow and nearsighted, so oftentimes the best defense is to simply run away. However, they do have a certain low cunning, so they often hide in places where their victims come across them unexpectedly, with predictable results. Pro tip: no sculptor carves statues of frightened adventurers. If you come across one, close your eyes and run back from whence you came.
WOTC gives us our first Basilisk in 2004's Giants of Legend set. It's pretty much spot on per the book description, complete with a bony spine running down its back, along with the curved nose horn. We get a hint of lighter brown on the underbelly under his chin. Otherwise, dark brown is the predominant color, which does offset the white of his fangs nicely. Pose is what it is, either ambling along on its 8 legs or hiding in a crevice awaiting an opportune time to attack. Score: Paint 13, Pose 12, Playability 13, Pizzazz 14 for a score of 52. While your standard basilisk is unaligned, your greater basilisk definitely leans evil, which to me is apparent in the yellow eyes, bared fangs, and red maw of this miniature from 2007's Night Below set. With reddish-brown spines running down its blue body, the pose has it turning upon itself as it brings its fearsome petrifying gaze upon an enemy sneaking up behind it. One quibble, I count only 6 legs. Still cool though, so score is pain 18, pose 23, playability 16, pizzazz 20, for a score of 76. WizKids gets into the Basilisk game in their second set, 2015's Elemental Evil. This one is definitely on the move, up on all 8 legs as it marches down a dungeon corridor or underground cave, tail raised above the body. WizKids goes with a light gray for the body, along with a brown back spine, but what really pops is the claws on all 8 of his feet. Both smaller and not as well detailed as the WOTC version, but still usable. Score: pain 11, pose 13, playability 13, pizzazz 12, for a score of 49. Basilisks from Greek mythology are pretty different than your standard D&D basilisk, which is reflected in this mini from the Mythic Odysseys of Theros set from 2020. Let's count the differences. 4 legs instead of 8. Larger than your standard basilisk, but smaller than a greater. Striped body, and a face that resembles a cross between a black dragon and a devil. It's cool, but outside of the Theros setting, I'm not sure about playability. Score: paint 15, pose 15, playability 10, pizzazz 18, for a score of 58. Our final Basilisk mini comes from 2023's Sand and Stone set, and it's not often I say this, but the early WizKids mini is better than this later version. Even smaller than the Elemental Evil version, this mini rocks the same gray body and brown spines of the previous one, but without the white foot claws that made the EE version stand out. I mean, use it if you have to, but it is the weakest of the bunch. Score: paint 10, pose 12, playability 13, pizzazz 10, for a score of 45.
At first glance, the Behir looks like a blue dragon, then you notice it has no wings and 12 legs, and you breathe a sigh of relief, just another tank to beat into submission. Then it hits you with its lightning breath, followed by an insulting comment, and you realize this is no dumb beast. Its serpentine body and multiple legs makes it a natural climber. They often lair in caves high on cliffs. Fun fact, similar to dragons, a Behir never stops growing and can reach gargantuan size.
We get 3 Behirs in the 20-year time span we've been covering, and, spoiler alert, the first one is by far the best. From the first set to feature huge miniatures, 2004's Giants of Legend, we get this rare. The mini is fantastic. Bright blue armor plates run from the tip of the tail to the crest of the head, topped with horn-like protrusions. A lighter blue underbelly, highlighted by a whitewash on the armored chest, is a great look as well. The pose is fantastic, completely turned on itself with 4 of its 12 legs raised to attack. Finally, a head and face is perfect too, with yellow eyes and white teeth and a red maw. The only thing that keeps this from getting a perfect score is playability. I imagine it's hard to get. It's definitely one you want to use if you can get one. Score: paint 25, pose 25, playability 20, pizzazz 25, for a score of 95. "15 years later, WizKids gives it a shot with this Behir Mini in 2019's Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage set. Smaller and more serpentine than the WOTC version, here we get a lighter blue body with a generous whitewash, which allows for the whiteness of the eyes, claws, and fangs to really shine. Pose has it in full attack mode, halfway upright to bring 6 of its 12 claws to bear, mouth agape in preparation of an electrical blast. The best thing this mini has going for it is time. The superior WOTC version is so old by now, this is probably the only one available to DMs. Score: Pain 18, Pose 21, Playability 25, Pizzazz 20, for a score of 84. WOTC, stop shrinking our Behirs. The final Behir comes from 2023's Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen set, and I guarantee you that if this mini was one of the 2 you pulled from your Dragonlance Super Booster, you were pissed. A monochrome midnight blue for the body does make the claws pop, but does nothing to highlight the body detailing. Like the WOTC version, this one is also reacting to an attack from behind, twisting its body to bring 3 claws and fangs to bear. Score: Paint 14, Pose 17, Playability 10, Pizzazz 13, for a score of 54.
Plumber man. I don't need a plumber. You're that clever shark, aren't you? Candygram. If you're old like me, you know this classic land shark sketch from SNL. Well, meet the Bulette, D&D's not quite as smart, but far more dangerous land shark. Heavy armor plates cover the body with a shark-like head, full of shark-like teeth. Burrowing animals who erupt from the earth to surprise and devour their prey, a single Bulette can quickly decimate a farm of livestock and people. Fun fact, Bulettes can jump quite high, allowing them to bring all 4 clawed feet down on an unfortunate target.
While most Bulettes are large, some grow to huge size and become known as dire Bulettes, which this one from 2004's Giants of Legends would certainly qualify. Silvery plating with matching claws cover the upper body and head over a black underbelly and legs. The head is particularly distinct, yellow eyes over the open mouth, white teeth and pink tongue on display. Posed with one foreleg stretching beyond the base, playability is limited due to the fortunate fact that Bulettes of this size are decidedly rare. Score: Paint 22, Pose 20, Playability 15, Pizzazz 25, for a score of 82. Four years later, WOTC gives us a much more size-appropriate Bulette in 2008's Dungeons of Dread set. Here, the monster is covered in bronze-colored plating over a gray body. I like how one plate sticks up a bit, almost like a shark's dorsal fin. Again, it's coming at the party with mouth agape, white teeth and red tongue clearly visible. Not quite as cool as the previous one, but eminently more playable, so score is Paint 18, Pose 20, Playability 18, Pizzazz 17, for a score of 73. While these WizKids Bulettes are from different sets, I'm reviewing them together because, other than some minor color differences, they are basically the same. The one with the black base is from 2016's Monster Menagerie set, while the clear-based one is from 2023's Sand and Stone. First off, let me say I love WizKids' decision to pose their Bulettes as bursting out of the ground, forelegs extended and mouths wide open, ready to devour their prey. As a DM, I would use these minis as the surprise attack, then switch to the WOTC mini for the encounter. Score: Paint 15, Pose 25, Playability 20, Pizzazz 20, for a score of 80.
And with that, we've made it through our first round of monstrosities. Thanks to all who watch. Please feel free to like, comment, or subscribe. Our next video will continue alphabetically with the C's, from carrion crawler to cragcat. Until next week, Eye of the Beholder, signing off.